Hi, everybody. It's Miranda Bre, and I am here on the Cleanse, Nourish, and Transform Summit. And I've been sharing my journey through food addiction. I am an integrative registered nurse with a long background in holistic health. And you guys, I still struggled with emotional eating and I struggled with food addiction. And I'm here. I have Cheri Alberts from The Watering Mouth, and she has transformed her own life with implementing a nutrient dense diet. So hi, Cheri. I'm excited to hear from you.
Hi, Miranda. Thank you so much for having me here.
Great. I'm so excited.
Me
So,
too.
Cheri, can you tell us a little bit about how long have you been eating this way and what led you to this change?
Yeah. So I actually have always been interested in healthy eating, but always also interested in not healthy eating. So I always wanted to be a healthy eater, but sort of always had that pull of junk foods and things like that. So I kind of had this feeling inside there must be a way to eat that can support our health, can keep us at a low weight, can make us feel good, and can sort of give us longevity and all that. There must be a way to eat like that. The current system can't be all there is, but I didn't know what that was. So I was kind of searching for it my whole life. Tried lots of different diets, lots of different ways of eating, and nothing was really working to get me to where I wanted to be weight-wise and not feeling crazy about food. And then back in 2013, I discovered a book called Eat to Live. And I didn't actually discover it. One of my close friends discovered it, and she had this amazing weight loss transformation. And whenever you see your friends do something like that, you're like, I wonder if I could do that too. So I was like, what are you doing? She told me. I read the book. And the book was, I read the book in a weekend, like just devoured it. I was like, oh, this is it. And if anyone else reads the book, hopefully you feel the same way, because it's not just one of these, oh, here's what you eat at this time of day or whatever. It's not a plan. It's like a lifestyle, like eat more plants, eat more vegetables. If you want to just boil it down, that's it, right? But there was all these other ideas in it of you'll get rid of feeling that hangry feeling. You'll lose weight easily. You'll keep it off for life. You'll be able to prevent and reverse diseases. And so that was a very attractive set of messages for me. And I was like, how can I get that in my life? So then the next few years became figuring out how to do that. And it was a little extra motivation for me, because at the time when I found Eat to Live, my father was diagnosed with cancer, and then he died just 10 months later. And he was my best friend. It was so, so hard and so difficult to watch him go through that. So it kind of gave me a little extra push. I also want to do this for my health. And we all have to find our own kind of, reasons why we want to do this. So, but I knew intuitively that my challenge was going to be, how do I do this, right? Like, I know what to do, but how do I do it with all my current food addictions and binge eating disorder? And I hoarded food so much every day. I was always hoarding food and just eating in private and binging and not being able to get out of those cycles. And so I thought, well, if this can heal this, then everything it's going to be a big thing solved in my life. So I just kept at it, and I had already had my website before I found this book. And if you even look at some of my old videos and stuff, they're all about, standard American diet food, cake and alcohol and things like that. And then you can sort of watch my progression over these years. Now it's been almost 6 years that I've been doing this, of just sticking with it and trying to figure it out, failing and winning, and just going back and forth until I got pregnant a couple of years ago, and then I had my daughter, and then I was like, all right, this is it. If I can drop this baby weight, I'm going to feel really successful. And then I lost I lost 50 pounds last year from the pregnancy. Wow. And an extra 10 on top of that. Now I'm at my lifetime goal weight that I really never thought was going to be possible. And it doesn't have that feeling of, oh, am I going to be able to hold on to it? Now I know with the habits I've put into place with this lifestyle and this type of food that it's going to be a thing that I can maintain. And so the whole goal then is teach other people how to do it too. So that's why I'm here.
Great, because I need to learn from you, and I know so many people who are watching this want to learn about this too. So because I feel like there's a lot of confusion, and honestly, I'm not here, like, I want people to choose for themselves.
Yeah.
But I know that after all the studies that I've done, the number one thing I want to do is eat more plants.
Yes.
And people can decide for themselves what framework that lands into, whether it's vegan, whether it's raw food, whether they do want to still eat some meat, whether they do. But for me, like, I want to eat more plants. And I love, like, when I listen to Dr. Furman, I'm like, and I know the evidence is out there, I'm like, oh, this guy, I think he knows something. So,
and that's the thing too, is listening to Dr. Furman, every time I hear him, I just go, I couldn't possibly argue with anything he says. It all just makes so much sense. It's all based on these huge studies, for a long periods of time, lots of people. So you can't really argue with the fact that it's based on not just one or two studies here and there, but with the wide breadth of, nutritional research that we've had over the last 20, 30 years, whatever it's been. He looks at all that stuff. He goes through all of it with a fine-tooth comb and says, okay, here's the sort of conclusions that we can draw. Here's how we should eat. And so for me, it's pretty obvious. Okay, if a diet, he always says, and this is so important to know, when you look at a diet, it needs to not be based on how much weight you can lose. That's not the idea. That's not the reason.
I agree 100% with that.
It should be about how it supports your longevity. And if you can get the weight loss out of it too, well, bonus, right? But what's cool about it is that when you have that weight loss and you get down to that optimal goal, you automatically have extra support for your longevity and extra support for disease healing and all that, if you're doing it in a healthy way. And so that's what I love about Eat to Live. And that was the really kind of attractive thing to me, was that, okay, I can eat natural plant foods. I don't have to eat chemical shakes or bars or protein powders or anything like that. I trust what comes from nature. I trust it a lot more than I do what would come from a lab. And so I can eat all those foods. And my challenge is to figure out how to do it long term and how to make it heal. Like for me, my biggest thing was, okay, I can eat salads and I can eat bowls with lots of grains and vegetables and things like that, but I want to use a lot of oil. I want to use a lot of salt. I want a lot of, extra flavor, because I'm so used to that with standard American diet stuff. But how can I really get high nutrient, right? And so knowing that, and then this is the sort of secret to it, is that the nutrients are the secret to the whole thing. When you get more and more nutrients and you get higher nutrient intake, your body processes it in a way that kind of starts fixing things without you even knowing it. It's happening inside your body. And the more nutrients you eat for the longer that happens, the better and better it gets. It's such a slow progression that it can be hard for people to stick with it, because they think, oh, I would rather have a cheeseburger than this, high nutrient salad or whatever. But it really, really does work. So it's, how do you get from eating the standard American diet to eating a high nutrient diet and enjoy it and get through all of those habits and disorders, like disordered eating that we've been doing for so long, the binging and the hoarding and the improper portion control, eating way too much and these kinds of things. And so that's the part that I focus on, is the how. How do I do it? And so I coach and I have my YouTube channel and all that. And that's really my passion.
Yeah. I love your YouTube channel too, by the way.
Thank you.
So go check it out, you guys. It's really good. And it's The Watering Mouth, right?
Yeah, so it's youtube.com/thewatering-mouth. Yeah.
So a lot of that stuff you just said, I really connect to that, because honestly, I have never, and I know this isn't everybody, but I have never, weight loss alone is not a motivator to me, or probably would have been a yo-yo dieter, but I'm not a yo-yo dieter. I've been a steady overweight for 10 years or something like that,
Sure.
And so I had to find a different motivator, and not that I don't want to lose the weight, because I do, but sometimes it's not as strong enough. People think it's the strongest motivator, but it's then how
it's really not. If it was the strongest motivator, everyone who was overweight would just figure it out. It's really not. You have to find that thing that is your big why.
And exactly. And I definitely for me, my big why is optimum health. I mean, that's one of my values, and that's kind of what I'm sharing along my journey, is that I've been in alignment with my values, and that's everything.
Yep.
I mean, I value optimum health, and then, I'm a nurse and I go to work and there's people eating pizza and candy and there's these potlucks with crazy amounts of fried food.
Yeah.
And so it does make me a little sad that that's the healthcare industry, but
Yes.
it's just Americans, you know. I mean, it's not like it's not coming out of love because people want to share their cooking and things like that. So
Yeah.
I'm not bad mouthing my coworkers or myself or anything, but
yeah, it's such a complicated issue because we have such a tie to this idea of food is love. And so when we think of food as love, that's like inherently problematic because it means that if we're not making food for somebody in a certain way, the way that they like it, then we don't love them or we're not caring for them. When in fact, we know it's the opposite. If we actually make healthful food for somebody, that is more love because it means not only do I want to take the effort to create something that's healthy for you, but I'm trying to support your long-term health as well. So it shows a long amount of love, long-term type love, right? But the problem is not with the people, it's with the society.
exactly.
Right? So we are in a society where money is very involved, profit is very involved, and that really does have most of the blame in this whole situation. And so if you take out the blame from the person and go, and because I had to find that too in my journey, was that it's not about the fact that I'm doing something wrong or that I can't be fixed or that there's something wrong with me. Yeah. That's with my clients because my passion is coaching. I love to teach and to coach. So that's what I try to do now is build this ability to just coach more and more people in the how. Because we know we need to eat more veggies. Like everyone knows that. Kids hear that from the time they're little babies. You know you need to eat more veggies, but how? When you have Doritos sitting over there and you have Oreos or cheesy casserole or things like this that definitely do taste a lot better and create more dopamine rush and do all these different things. Could you even imagine a world where you actually prefer salad to that?
I would love that world. I would look forward.
And the world, it exists, but it's a journey. Yeah.
So that brings up some questions because to be really honest, like I love healthy food. I love gourmet raw food. I love a really good salad.
Yeah.
It's just that I have an issue that I love all the things. And so, because I also love sugar and so the addictive foods is, so I'm working towards it. Let's eliminate the processed foods and eat more of those healthy foods. But one of the struggles that I've had is in the how for sure. So that's great that you're coaching on that because sometimes it feels like, oh gosh, why does this feel like a lot of work? And those are some of the things that I want to learn. So maybe you could give us like a couple of examples of how you made that easier.
Yeah, exactly. You're right. First of all, a note about work. Yes, it is work. Let's talk about a different example. Retirement, for instance. If you want to retire when you're 55 or 60 or 65, how do you do that? You do that by having saved a lot of money and working a lot for your whole life. If you don't do that, by the age 65, you're going to keep working. You just don't have a choice there, right? So it has to be something that was a habit your whole life, or at least for a good chunk of it, and that you really put some effort into it. Everyone always says this, and it's such a cliche, but it's true. Anything you want is worth working for, then you should actually put in the work and do that. So there is going to be some work involved. And that's, I think, the first, I had one client one time signed on with me, and we were just doing a month of coaching, and we got about a week into it, and she literally said, oh, wow, I didn't realize this was going to be so much work. I don't want to do this. And she left. Wow. And I was like, okay, well, cool, because you just made space for somebody who really does want to put some effort into it. But that's the whole idea, is that if you want any change in your life, you have to put some work into it. It's going to, right now it's very easy to do exactly what you do. And in order to create a new result, you have to do a new set of actions. But the good news, that's the bad news, but the good news is that once you start putting those actions into place, it keeps getting easier and easier and easier as you go until you are a healthy eater. And you can imagine choosing what you choose now for lunch later, right? So it gets easier and easier. That's the fun part. And like my biggest mantra for coaching is always just keep going. Even if you're messing up for 2 weeks, or even if you just feel like you can't get it together for 6 months, just keep going. Because if you were to look at my journey, it's a whole lot of this, a whole lot of like, I'm not doing this, I'm doing this, I'm not doing it, I'm doing it. That was my journey. And it still is my journey. It's just that it's a little bit more even now. It's not as bad and it's easier. Like, so that's kind of how it goes. And you do have to put that work in. But the good news is that once those habits are built, they're pretty stuck there. And so then you can kind of go, oh, you can always fall back on what you ate the day before or what you've been eating for 6 months. Like I've had smoothies for breakfast for years now. And then when I don't want a smoothie for breakfast, I'll have an oatmeal thing, or I have a few other choices that I can go to. And then I miss my smoothies. So I'll go back to the smoothie. And because I've created such habits in that way, it gets easier and easier. But there is something that's really important in this equation that people don't talk about. I think people are starting to talk about it a bit more, but this is what my coaching is all about. It's the thought part. It's the mind part in the brain. So I sort of look at it as sort of a twofold thing. You have to eat the right foods to create the physiological changes in the body to make it a bit easier as you go, to detox, to lose the weight. And then that just kind of creates an equation for the body that makes it sort of levels the playing field, makes it a little easier. You have to eat the good food. You have to do your best. But the other part is at the same time, you have to be working on the mind, because what it all comes down to, 100%, all of it is your thoughts. It's the thoughts that happen in your mind. So I have a client who really doesn't like salad. She likes vegetables, but she doesn't like to eat greens. Greens make her feel like she's chewing like a cow. And so she feels, she feels like she's suffering. She feels like she doesn't enjoy this. And further, when you take this a little further, we have discovered with her that eating salad feels too cheap to her. It feels like she's not getting enough enjoyment out of her life. It feels like, I'm just doing something that's not fun. Life should be about enjoyment. And so she equates greens with lack of enjoyment in life. Now that's a big punishment. Exactly. It's just like a punishment. It's a big stretch to make. But what's interesting is we all have thoughts in our mind that need to be flipped similar to that. Not that specific thought. We all don't have the thought that greens equal less enjoyment, but we have a thought like, pizza is more enjoyment than greens, or sugar is more enjoyment than salad. And that's why we make different choices. We have these thoughts in our mind that come up. And it's interesting once you start looking at the thoughts, just what you can start to change just by even noticing your thoughts. So going, okay, here's what I think, when you're making a choice for lunch and you often choose this one thing, you say, all right, here's what I think about having this one choice. And then here's what I think about this other choice. Just noticing what you're thinking and going, this is how I feel about this one choice. That allows you a little bit of space to go, I wonder if I could change that thought. I wonder if I could change what I think about. So we could take this other client, for instance. I wonder what I think about salad. I think salad equals not enjoyment, but I could think, and many other people think, salad equals health. Salad equals vibrancy. Salad equals weight loss. Salad equals the life I'm excited about and interested to bring to myself. So I'm not saying this is an easy thing to do, to change those thoughts, but I am saying that thoughts are probably the most important part of the game, and understanding what's going on in your head and why you think what you think. That's what ends up really creating that kind of change over time, where you suddenly go, oh, wait a minute, a year later, I'm a person who thinks salad is really good, right? That's what's exciting, and where you can kind of make bigger changes over time. And you find yourself in 6 years, like I did, starting off struggling and not knowing how to fix it, but 6 years later going, wow, wait a minute, could I use the word easy for this? Yeah, it's kind of easy. Well, that's the goal there, is to get to that ease and get to that place where it's where it feels natural, and it comes from the food you eat and it comes from the thoughts you have.
Cheri, there were so many gold nuggets in there. So first of all, you know what, Dr. Furman, he said one thing to me that really hit me the most of the whole time. He said, you're not going to like it. And I was like, oh, like I had a belief that I needed to like it
Yeah.
while I changed.
Yes.
And so I'm still processing that today, honestly, because we just
Definitely.
talked yesterday.
Definitely.
And then something that you just said there as well is that I don't know that I so much have that at home, but it's really when I go out to eat,
Mm.
making choices. It's like, can I choose the salad? It feels like, well, this might be the only time I eat here all year. This might be the
Deprivation.
only time. How can I choose the
Yep.
salad?
Deprivation for sure.
And it feels like, well, I'm not getting all this place has to offer for
Yep.
me if I choose the salad,
Isn't it funny that thought that occurs in your mind that's actually, then I like to look at it like this. Okay, let's say you had two people. You had one person who had been healthy their whole life. See, they were raised that way. Their parents taught them they need to eat really good foods. They kind of always chose those things because that's how they grew up. And then we take somebody who was like me a few years ago, or maybe where you are now, and you put those two people in the same restaurant, and you put the same menu in front of them, and they both make completely different choices based on where they came from. So that to me is the biggest proof, like 100% proof, that thoughts are things that we don't have to accept necessarily, because we didn't think the same things when we were a teenager about how it's not fair that I have to clean my room, or why can't I, go out with my friends or whatever. But when we look back on those things, we go, oh, actually, I understand why I shouldn't have done those things. And now I wouldn't do those things if I had the choice. But when we were the teenager, we only had this set of, rules or thoughts in our head that made sense to us at the time. But as we grow, we go, oh, we can sort of change those things. So you say, all right, what would that person who makes a different choice in a restaurant, what would be going through their head as they're looking at that menu? They certainly wouldn't be thinking, this barrage, and I've had this my whole life, this barrage of, oh my gosh, I have to have these things on here because I never go out to eat that much, and I'm not going to be able to have it that often. And then the food comes and it's like, I have to eat the whole thing right now because I love it so much. And these thoughts are going through our minds, right? Now imagine what the thought process must be in that other person's brain. It's a whole lot of, wow, this place really has some terrible choices. I'm going to choose among the salads, or which salad is the best one here because it's going to make me feel better. And when I've eaten things that are on this side of the menu, I never feel good. And, they're having these kinds of thoughts. What's the difference between those two people? And it's just the way their life led them to that place. This sort of, constant work or just different type of input for their whole life. And then after a while, they just become this person. Well, being the person that always chooses the higher calorie, more fun dishes, that kind of a thing, being that person, that can change over time. And it's about how do you make that change? So in my coaching is all about that. How do you get from being a person who thinks those crazy craving, binging kind of thoughts to being a person who can look at a menu and make choices that support our health because we actually want to. And want to make a distinction quickly about the idea that you're not going to like it. That's in the beginning. I want to make sure that
yeah,
that.
he for sure said that.
And I know that he probably said that. I know that he probably said that too, but it's really important to keep that message in your mind that this is going to get better and I am going to enjoy it. Because when I was telling you in the beginning, like we think about pizza versus, salad or whatever. If I were to think about pizza or salad right now, I know that I would love to have pizza. I'd love it. It feels good. It tastes good, and some people never give up that sort of feeling about pizza. I'm probably always going to love pizza. But I also know that I 100% get the same kind of first bite you eat of a salad, the salads that I make, I'm like, oh, this is amazing. The first many bites of it till I get to the place where I'm full. And then I suddenly am like, okay, I've had enough. Versus that crazy feeling of when you're eating pizza and you can't stop eating the pizza, right?
Yes.
I know I get very similar amounts of enjoyment from the first set of bites of both of those foods now. If you'd asked me to do that 5 years ago, there's no way I would have felt that way about salad. But it's, as I was saying with the retirement example, it's something that you grow and change over time and over time. So you get to the place where that investment now has turned into real pleasure. It's turned into a real thing that's normal for you. And you can get there. It's just about putting in the work, making the habits, maybe being coached by somebody who knows more about it or just has more experience on how to flip those things in your mind, and then finally finding yourself as that person. That's really freeing. That's really peace.
Yeah. Another thing that you said earlier is, that's part of, I've actually been doing these live Facebook videos. I'm going to be going deeper into sharing like my journey through going this too on YouTube.
Yeah.
I started a YouTube channel called Love This Flesh and Bone, because
Awesome.
for me, this is about like, one of my messages is that it's okay to love yourself where you're at and want to change.
Yes.
And so, you can have body positivity and want to move into another direction.
Can I say one thing? I want to say one thing about that real quick. So take it from somebody who was always overweight, 30, 40 pounds, always overweight, binge eating disorder, hoarding, blah, 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 who felt crazy about wanting to be the person I am now and putting so much work and effort into it, to feeling like it's pretty effortless now to be able to stay here. The transition of being that person, I'm telling you, being this person feels good, but there's still the same feelings about, it's the same exact feelings about feeling self-conscious or not feeling good enough, or if I gain a couple pounds now, I feel just as bad as when I used to gain 10 or 15 in a weekend. These things change, but I mean, your body changes, but your thoughts have to change with you. You have to work on the thoughts at the same time, because when you get to your goal, finally, you realize that it wasn't the goal, it was the journey that was important. So it's about getting those thoughts and just what you're talking about.
Exactly.
On those thoughts. Yep, for sure.
That was what I was going to say about how you said it used to be like this, probably because there's a lot of people have that tendency for the all or nothing, and it's like,
exactly.
All, now I'm nothing, I'm all, and then the punishment. And I'm just now starting to experience where I'm like, you know what, I am moving, like it's slower than I wanted it to be. And I'm not even talking about the weight loss. I'm just talking about the allowing myself to be like, you know what, I want to have this nourishing smoothie. And then I'm still struggling to say no to the chocolate that my coworkers are constantly pushing at, or have around. And so I'm and I'm like, you know what, that's okay, because I'm not going to be like, oh, I took the chocolate and then, punish myself by not drinking the smoothie or something, And so I feel like I'm starting to move into the, it's okay to be in both places and, one foot
and it's never, if it was about being able to go from one situation to the other like that, everyone would do it, right? It would be so easy if there was one way to just do a thing and suddenly you flipped and became this new person. Just because I'm at my goal weight doesn't mean I don't still struggle with different things about, how it's working, or am I doing this part right, or whatever. It's a gradual thing. And it takes a long time. And that's why my biggest mantra is just keep going. Because you're going to find yourself one day going, oh, wait a minute, I'm a lot different than I used to be. And it kind of works like that, where you're like, whoa, that took, a long time, but wow, I really am different. And so being, gentle with yourself, I like to say too, be gentle with yourself when you have these slip ups, or I don't like to call them stuff like that, but when you eat something that you didn't necessarily mean to
make a different choice.
Yes, when you make a different choice than you sort of meant to, it's okay. Just keep going. It's not about getting it right away. It's about figuring out how to do it long term and put those habits into place.
Great.
Yeah.
So one of the other things that I was going to ask you about, and another reason why people might be like, why is she doing this? What does she have to share with us when she hasn't integrated or embodied this, her knowledge. But for one thing, I'm a psychiatric nurse and I work with addicts every day.
Wow.
And it took me a long time to even recognize my issues as an addiction.
Right.
And the other reason is because I feel like there needs to be a message out there that we don't have to wait, like I said, until we're at our goal, because the journey is important. And I want to inspire other people to be okay with being where they're at, because wherever they're at, that's where you're at.
Yep.
So, but the other thing, one more thing is that for me, I felt like I needed a bigger level of accountability. And so while I get this message out there by bringing in people like you and people who have done this, I'm also getting like a a very high level of accountability, because there's a possibility there could be, thousands and thousands of people who end up watching this.
Totally.
So
Yeah.
can you tell me a little bit about accountability and the things that you've done?
Yeah, this is a really, really great question, because accountability to me as a coach is such an interesting concept. What it means is that we cannot be successful without someone else watching us. That puts it out of control for us. It makes it so that we're not the ones that do it. And so it makes it feel like, oh, if I don't hold myself accountable, or I don't do the thing, that I'm not going to be successful. And that's scary, because it means we're not in control, and it means we can't fix it. But the alternative is thinking that it's all within us, and then we have to be afraid of whether or not we can do it, whether we believe we can do it or not. So it's a double-edged sword there. But when I started my YouTube channel, when I started doing Eat to Live, like in the year 2016, I did a series of 200 vlogs. So every single day I vlogged about exactly what I was eating, how I felt about it, what I thought, what I was going through, what was difficult. I did that because I wanted to get, first of all, in the habit of doing videos regularly, but I also wanted to have the accountability of putting it out in the public. And so for me, I did a very similar thing to what you're doing. And I want to have that accountability of talking about it all the time. Now, I have to say, it didn't end up being the accountability of it that like, this is what I ate and whatever, because I still ended up binging. I still ended up hoarding. I still ended up having bad habits, even when I was doing that and people were watching. What it came down to was just the habit building of doing it over and over and over again. That was the whole thing behind it, right? And so I want to mention this accountability thing, because a lot of us feel that if we don't have someone watching us, or we don't report, and that's a lot of what happens in the coaching relationship too, is having people reporting. And that can help. And that's kind of what the current model of coaching is that it's based on accountability, and that if you didn't do what you were supposed to do, your coach is going to be like, oh, shame on you, and then figure out how you're not going to do whatever. I don't really think that works very well from experience.
We have enough shame of our own.
Yeah, that's exactly right. We have enough shame. And I just don't think it's a motivator. I don't think it really works well for this it can work for short-term goals, but I don't think it's the long-term kind of thing we're looking for. So I think what it comes down to is what I was saying before. It's about the thoughts. It's about the internal stuff that happens. When we're in front of that restaurant menu and we're having all these thoughts in our mind, when we have the thought, oh, I'm worried about not being able to have this meal again, or I haven't had this in so long, I really want to have this one, I don't want to miss out on this flavor. Those are the thoughts that get us to act. It's not whether or not how many times have you gone to a restaurant with somebody that knows you're on a diet, and you said, make sure I don't get this, or make sure I don't get the bread, or make sure I order something healthy. That works sometimes, but that's not, you can't always have your friend there to tell you what to do. It's about the journey inside of us. So as we're sitting there with the menu, the power comes from being able to rationalize with your brain and actually sit down and go, wait a minute. What is the proper choice here? And then actually making that choice. It sounds impossible before you start doing it, but with the techniques that I use in my coaching and all that kind of stuff, you fix that part. It's like turning around a cruise ship, but it is fixable. Mm-hmm. So when you can get those thoughts under control and start to make the choices for yourself, but I want to say, with this accountability of what you're doing at the summit and being in front of all these people and stuff, that is also helpful to kind of help to turn the ship at the same time, because it does support it for a period of time. But at the same time, you've got to be, the environment and all that. You have to understand why. You've got to read the books. You've got to really put this into place, but you have to be working on the mind at the same time, and you have to be eating the foods to help the physiological part of it. So it is kind of a big involved thing, but it's just like retirement. If you didn't actually go through and set up your retirement account, decide what percentages you want to put in, when you're going to put them in, if you didn't do all that work and you didn't decide what you were going to do with the money, where you were going to put it, what you were going to do once you retire, you didn't take the time to do all that stuff, you wouldn't have the retirement fund once you're ready to retire, right? So it's the same thing as putting in all this work now and just doing work little by little by little by little, and you notice, wow, I'm a different person one day, and that's the funnest part of it. It's fun when you you suddenly realize and you go, wait a minute, I actually have changed, because you don't notice it as you're doing it. But that the little work of all those different things you were talking about, that is really what does it. So keep doing what you're doing, because it's going to help, and work on the other stuff at the same time.
Yeah, definitely.
Mm-hmm.
It's actually really fun. And I'm sure everybody is not going to want to do it to this level, but
Yeah.
I want to create a space. And then, I am doing a group too in Facebook.
Yes.
And that's what we're going to be doing. I want to create a safe space for people to share their journey if they don't want to share it to the whole world. But, I feel like I've gotten to a place in my life where I am very comfortable with myself and who I am. So I'm okay with where I'm at, and I want to change. And so, this is where I'm at, and I have all that stuff. And I mean, I've studied integrative nutrition. I've got the blenders and the books and the schools and and I want people to know that too, because the whole entire healthcare system has been blaming the public, like, well, you're not compliant, and shaking the finger, like, you're not compliant. But the reality is, it's a way deeper cause that people are struggling with food. And like you said, there's societal problems, and there's underlying emotional issues.
Yeah.
It could be from their childhood. They might have issues with perfectionism. They might have issues with all or nothing.
It's interesting too, because most of those issues that you just mentioned, a lot of people can relate to those, and a lot of people would go, oh, well, this happened because it happened in my childhood and whatever. And what's interesting about it is that we all have causes for why we are the way we are. Like, everything that happened in the past is what equals today. So that does play a role. But in order to change, we can't go back and fix those things, because they are part of history. That's it. So in order to change, we have to work with what's present. And what's present is the thoughts that are a result of things that happen. So we have to change how we think about the things that happened to us before. And that is the real work of going, what do I think of when I look at a menu? Not necessarily why. It can be helpful sometimes to understand the why, but the real change and the real transformation occurs from working on those particular thoughts and just trying to improve the thought itself or themselves.
Yeah, I love that tip, because it's like there's a shift. There's definitely a shift there. And I mean, there's something I say to my patients all the time at work, and I tell them that you don't have to believe everything you think.
Yes.
And a lot of people don't know. And so it's very similar to something you said earlier.
Yes.
But it's like, well, but first of all, you have to know what you're thinking.
Yes.
And kind of what you're saying is, what am I thinking when I'm looking at that menu? Because a lot of times there's not even an awareness.
Right. It just is flooding. It's just, I call it the hurricane. Yep.
And so it's like, emotionally, I'm really driving toward these unhealthy things because I want the reward. But I love how you said that shift, because it's like, well, if I shift my thinking, then the reward can be the salad or the veggie bowl or something different.
Yeah, and it's interesting because shifting that thought feels very unnatural in the beginning, just because you've had that thought for so long, so it feels right. But there's a difference between a thought being correct and a thought being just programmed. So when you have a correct thought, it's because it's based on something that everyone would agree on. I need to eat more vegetables, right? Vegetables are good for me. That would be a thought that would support something that everyone would agree on. That's how you know it's true. Anything, like if you ever have a thought that not everyone agrees on, it's just an opinion. It's something that can be changed. Yeah. So if you have those two people in the restaurant and one thinks, I have to eat this. I don't have any other choice but to eat this because my brain is making me. If that woman over there doesn't agree with that same thought, she doesn't think, I have to eat this pasta dish. She thinks, no, I want a salad. Mm-hmm. You know it's not true, and it can be changed. That's a good way to kind of, figure out what's going on in your head and deciding whether that thought is actually going to help or if it's going to hurt you, and working on it. But it's not easy to change, and it takes a while because it doesn't feel correct in the beginning. Mm-hmm. But the more and more you do this work and, you kind of get the techniques and tools to how to fix these thoughts, the better and easier it gets over time. And then the more you believe certain thoughts, certain new thoughts that you're trying to sort of program in there.
Yeah. So Cheri, I just one more question. Like, how long would you say that it took you from, when you were talking about the ups and downs, how long did that process take to where you felt really firm in your decision making?
Yeah, it's a good question. And that question usually from people, I'm not trying to say this is what you're saying, but it usually comes from people going, how long am I going to suffer? Right? How long is this difficulty going to last?
Uh-huh.
And for me, and I interviewed Furman a few months ago, and I was mentioning to him, I did it the long way. I did it the hard way, and it wasn't fun. It took me years. I would say in the beginning, I kind of had these up and downs because right when my father passed, I had only been doing it for 3 months. So I really didn't have the stability to stick with it the way I wanted to. I kind of did it 33% of the time while I was grieving, but I didn't do very good at keeping it up. So I kind of went off and on and off and on. And so I like to say the best way to do this, it's not easy, but the best way to do it is to go all in, follow all the rules, do all the things, because your transformation happens way faster. It's harder in the beginning, but it's so much quicker. So that's not what I did though. So I was on and off and on and off and on and off. I didn't believe a lot of things like you shouldn't have salt, you shouldn't have oil, you shouldn't have sugar, you shouldn't have dairy, you shouldn't have meat, blah, blah, blah. I didn't believe that those things were actually going to be helpful. So I tested them all out for years. Like, oh, let me just try to give up salt and see what happens. Changed everything. Oh, let me just try to give up shrimp finally. Changed everything. And then years later, oh, let me just give up dates because that's the thing I would eat way too much of. It was sort of my replacement sugar obsession. And when I gave up dates, everything changed again. And so I finally was like, okay, I need to just stop. I need to just do all the things. And then I found I can do like within just a couple of days, I'll be over something. Like I just realized to myself yesterday, I don't ever think about dates the way I used to, because I used to think about dates like maybe somebody would think about chocolate. I would just be thinking about them all the time, like, oh, I need to go have a snack. I need to have dates. I'd eat like 10 of them. I'd be eating them like that hurricane that I used to eat pasta like. And now that I've given up dates, it only took about a couple days to sort of get over them. And now I was like, oh, it's interesting. If I think about dates, I didn't even think of them as an interesting thing anymore. It's just kind of a food. I don't even think of it anymore. Whereas anytime I'd think of them before would be really difficult. And so it's a complicated answer to say that it depends on everybody. It depends on how all in you go. But really you have to be doing the work at the time of eating the good foods, of working on your mind and all that. I would say, honestly, if you really put effort into it, you could be done with all this in 4-6 months. You could be a changed person. Usually I think it's about 6 months, and I usually will coach people for about 6 months at a time at the very minimum, because I feel like in order to change a lot of those habits and thoughts, it takes work. And then it takes understanding how to make the food, finding out what dishes you like, all this kind of stuff. And that's a lot of different work that you kind of have to put in. You can't just get that in a week or a month. And so, but they do say, and I've watched my brother go through this too, because he eats like this now too. After watching me for a few years, he took this up last year. He's lost like 80 pounds. He's doing amazing. And he said that it took him about 4 months to where he started to have lessening of symptoms like that hangry thing and the irritability and stuff when he got hungry and all that. It took about 4 months. And then it was right about the 6-month mark where he started to really feel like, oh, this is natural, like this is normal. But he started liking the food just within a few weeks, like 3 weeks, compared to just eating straight up burgers and things like that. He started really liking this food pretty quickly. So it kind of depends on the person, but yeah, I think that's kind of a good guideline.
I love the food quickly. I do love healthy food. I do.
You're at an advantage. You get to start off
having some good key salad dressings is because that's the only thing is I need to make the salad dressings like whole food instead of buying them at the store or whatever. There's probably a few good healthy ones out there, but
there are,
yeah. But so I feel like that's the key for me to improving the health of my salad. But I love healthy food. I mean, I do love what it feels like to I think it tastes amazing. And so I feel like I am lucky in that area because I know some
Definitely.
people do have an aversion and it will be
Yeah,
a
that's,
little bit
you
harder.
definitely have a little bit of extra work if you're starting off when you have an aversion, but to be able to go from wherever you are, it really does work. It comes from the mind part of just going, working through that mental, what is the automatic thing that you think that you've been thinking your whole life that got you here? And how can you fix that, right?
Yeah. Do
Yeah.
you have any last tips for us, Cheri?
Well, I just wanted to say real quick, you said the thing about salad dressing, and I think that is one of the biggest things that people have an issue with when they start this. When you have a nutritarian salad dressing, it typically is something like blended nuts and seeds plus a fruit and some vinegar. Tends to be usually a little bland for people when they start off because they're used to having very sweet or salty kinds of dressings that sort of complement and mask the flavor of some of the vegetables. But what I like to say is keep it simple in the beginning. You don't even have to make the dressings, right? And when we talk about very specific nutritarian foods, these foods from this book, Eat to Live, high nutrient stuff that's going to create all this change that we've been talking about. If you just I like to think of it as sort of deconstructing the salad dressing. So you have your greens, you have all the good nutritarian foods, you have some beans, you have some raw onions, you have a little cooked mushrooms, and you have some, maybe sprinkle a little bit of nuts and seeds on there and a bunch of different vegetables. Now you have a salad that's got all the good stuff in it. And then what do you use for the dressing? So what I like to do is just sort of deconstruct something. Like I'll just put some avocado and lime in separately, right? So I just put it in and sort of mix it in, and then it makes its own dressing. So you don't even have to really think about dressing. Another thing I really like to do is I'll take just hummus, but I'll use an oil-free hummus that I'll find at Whole Foods or something that's kind of low sodium. I'll just use hummus as a dressing. Or you can sort of thin it out with some non-dairy milk. Now you've got like a thinner kind of dressing. You can use that. Super yummy. Or you can do it's sort of Dr. Furman's favorite. He always will mash in some nut butter, like almond butter plus tomato sauce. I love that. That's a really nice creamy type dressing, and it just takes a second to make. You just pour the tomato sauce in, the nut butter, and mash it together. But then I like to add hummus to that. So I'll mix that all together. You got this really nice, creamy, really
that sounds good.
Yeah, super, super yummy dressing. So I like to take things that are really easy and just throw them in instead of having to have a specific type of dressing. This way you can change things up. Like one day you might have some avocado and lemon and nutritional yeast, and the next day you might have some tahini and nutritional yeast and lime, and then the next day you might have just hummus and tomato sauce or whatever. And so you kind of find these low sodium, no oil things, and they all taste amazing when you kind of mix and match with a salad with all those other great things in there. This is how you kind of can keep it simple, try different things, try out different flavors that you love. And then over time of trying different salads to complement these different things, you just learn more and more until you just look in your fridge and you go, oh, I'm going to have this for lunch. And it's easy. And all you had to do is just pull a few things out, throw them in the bowl, and you're done. It takes that sort of workout after a while if you just kind of experiment with how to make things easier. And so that's a tip that I love to give for salad. And
That's a great tip. Made me hungry. I think I'm going to have a salad for lunch.
I'm about to go make mine too, for sure.
Okay, Cheri, this has been so awesome. I am so glad that you came on. And so you guys definitely check out her YouTube channel, The Watering Mouth, and you can learn a lot from Cheri there, and feel free to reach out to her too. So thank you, Cheri. I'm gonna stop this recording really quick.
Okay, thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Oh, I'm looking on the wrong thing. There you go. There it is.